Good morning. This is Jason coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Thursday at about 10:26. So yeah, I am trying to keep a relatively steady pace at uploading videos. It's been a little while. It's mainly just because of my schedule and things like that. But after a couple weeks, I'll uh, I'll be able to get back on track. I used to make a video almost every day. I still kind of do, but it's a little bit tougher now again because of my work schedule and my day schedule. But I'll be getting back to a little bit more of a normal schedule. I know most folks who have YouTube channels don't probably put up as many videos, like not like every day. And I realize that could help the channel or hinder the channel as far as like getting more traction and things like that. But I don't know. It's I look at it as I look this at this channel as just a personal diary to a degree. But again, it's all about the films and what these films mean to me. More or less regarding or even disregarding to a degree the genre of those films. It's just I look at movies as movies, and so this is kind of how for what it's worth, I look into how my brain works as warped as it is. So I'm always trying to bring a variety of different films and different genres. My favorite two styles have always been and will always be horror and science fiction. But I've been doing exploring lots of other things. So it's been a lot of fun. I like to try to bring as much variety as I can to certain things. Variety is the spice of life. As cliche as that is, I think it's true. I think the more, if you're into writing or you're just an avid writer or you're a painter, you do it as a hobby or you try to do it as a kind of a career. If you're involved with dance, if you're an actor or an actress, all those different things. I've always found, and being and also being in the arts or being a musician, I've always found too that people that I look up to and that I really love and that I put at a really high on a really high pedestal. When I look into some of those people, those key figures in those respected genres or those art forms, I'm always amazed by how much they have going on as a person and how much knowledge they have about their respected genre and how diverse um, how diverse their perspective is, meaning that they've really taken the time to explore that whole style, that they personally had the way they express themselves in their respected art forms and the level of knowledge and the level of diversity. Like just one example, like I just recently or yesterday I watched a really interesting interview with Christopher Nolan. Amazing director, one of the greatest directors around, and I think one of the best directors of all time. I mean, just incredible. He, I just recently saw Oppenheimer over the weekend, and I still have to upload and do a review for that video, but I will do that. Really tremendous film and a really uh, moving movie in a lot of ways. But I watched this really cool interview with him, with Christopher Nolan, and also Cillian Murphy, who is the star of Oppenheimer, and he's worked with Christopher Nolan for years. And it's really cool. It's basically the two of them in this big giant video store where they sell lots of movies, and I guess they actually rent them too. And I think it takes place in the shop is in England, and it's just the two of them for about 20 minutes to a half hour talking shop about movies, and it's pretty amazing. And it's, it's a short clip, but you get this unbelievable sense of how knowledgeable Christopher Nolan is. Like literally everything in this shop. It can be, films that are maybe on the more well-known or commercial side, but then also, much older films from the 50s, 60s, and even before, where he has so such a deep knowledge of all things film. It's incredible, like how much he knows. Literally, like a walking encyclopedia of film. Everything he'll pick out. A really obscure movie. And the interesting thing watching it, like I watch a lot of film, but I'm not nowhere near as knowledgeable as someone like Christopher Nolan. But he'll pick out one movie, and it can be this relatively unknown movie, like a European movie, foreign film from like say the '60s, and he'll know every detail. He'll know about who the composer was, who the cinematographer. He'll know all of these stories about the film. It's pretty unbelievable, like a total audiophile. And also Cillian Murphy, his knowledge too is, he's an incredible actor, and his knowledge of film from also a little bit of a different perspective, being that Christopher Nolan's a director, but you just get this sense that how much he is also in love with film and how knowledgeable he is about those films that he loves. And the thing that is the most kind of inspiring about, that I got from watching this video was how they have their, Christopher Nolan, especially Christopher Nolan, has his, his fingers or his feet in so many genres and is knowledgeable about so many different things. It's not, just one particular thing like say suspense films or, just Alfred Hitchcock. It's kind of like everything. And it's really inspiring. And I feel like that is probably at the core of it, of why he is who he is, because of his deep knowledge and his understanding of all the facets of film and the language, of what all of that entails. And to me, that is so inspiring. And when I see his films, I can see that deep knowledge of all of those hours and hours that he put into studying film. Martin Scorsese is also another director who is very, very well known for his incredible knowledge. Like literally everything that was ever released, he is either aware of it or has seen it. Most definitely has probably seen it. So this brings me to today's movie, and that is Raging Bull. I got this masterpiece probably about 2 years ago. This has always been one of my favorite movies. I think it's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, uh, collaboration between Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese. They have a long track record of working together, with Goodfellas, Mean Streets, which is probably overall my favorite film by Scorsese. I did a review on Mean Streets a few months ago. But De Niro and Scorsese have worked together for years in many, many films. Just recently, or 2 years ago now, they did The Irishman together, which is just, an incredible movie. Casino, Goodfellas, so many great films. Of course, Raging Bull, The King of Comedy, amazing film, a movie that I just recently saw. So they've had such a deep, deep connection. And I just think, like, this is what a Taxi Driver, can't forget about Taxi Driver. This came out in 1980, a little bit after Taxi Driver. And I feel like De Niro's portrayal of Jake LaMotta, and it's based on a true story of a heavyweight champion. His portrayal is so mesmerizing in this film. He like fits into that very definition of where he is completely transformed into Jake LaMotta. Like he literally becomes Jake LaMotta's character. And I also feel, there's a lot of great boxing movies. I'm a fan of boxing as a sport. My dad is has always been a big boxing fan. I've always, and I've talked about it in other videos throughout this past year. In regards to my love of martial arts, and I had spent many years studying various forms of martial arts. Mostly it's been years and years, and I have been out of practice of martial arts for a very long time. But for years, I studied, lots of different styles. I started in high school, and then after college, I got really into it again, and then took a break, and then I got back into it again, and then I did it pretty steady for a bunch of years. And one of the arts that I ended up getting into was mixed martial arts, where mixed martial arts is like a combination of various disciplines. Where, it's most well known because of the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And mixed martial arts basically consists of a combination of all kinds of different disciplines. You have kickboxing, Muay Thai kickboxing, and then you have American kickboxing. You have jujitsu, karate, kung fu, all kinds of different styles, but they're basically all combined in this new kind of hybrid martial art, and it's become known as martial arts. And also boxing, Western boxing, is also very much part of it. Also, so you have a lot of these fighters that are trained in multiple disciplines to create this new hybrid form. And I spent a little bit of time studying more or less traditional Western boxing and practicing it, and I really loved it. And I think you know, it's an American sport, but I don't feel like it's different than say your typical, say I don't know, Okinawan karate or taekwondo. It's obviously very different. It's a different discipline, but I also regard it as a form of self defense. It's really great discipline. And I also think of it in its own way as a martial art. And, I've seen it become more and more incorporated into the mixed martial arts. And I feel like, and there's been a lot of great boxing films. Most notably, one of the greatest movies ever, the first Rocky. It's a masterpiece. And then The Fighter, which came out a few years ago with Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg. An incredible film. There's been quite a few boxing movies throughout the years. But I kind of feel like if you look at just the realism and the choreography, I kind of feel that the Raging Bull still stands the test of time, considering it came out in 1980, many years ago. But I think all around, it's probably the greatest boxing movie ever made. And it's especially the way the film is shot. The choreography for the fights are just astounding and amazing. It's really gritty. And of course it stars Joe Pesci, who plays Jake LaMotta's brother, and Joe Pesci also has a huge track record working with Scorsese for years and years, just as much as De Niro, if not more. He's been in all of those movies that I've mentioned, and they've worked together forever. And so there's a deep level of commitment and love between the three of them as um, forces in the film industry. And I'm a huge fan of black and white. This is all shot in black and white. The film score in this movie is astounding. The cinematography is completely breathtaking. It's such an emotional movie, and Jake LaMotta truly was a monster in the ring. This you know in my generation or years and years later, I would kind of compare it to the emergence of, say, someone like Mike Tyson. There was never somebody as ferocious and as uncaged, like an uncaged animal, like Jake LaMotta. Like comparing that to like Mike Tyson. Just a totally, just a completely like savage, untamed beast. And his life reflected that. His life was so kind of in shambles, and he was just such a an animal in the ring, but then also outside of the ring. And his character is so complex. Jake LaMotta's character and De Niro's portrayal of Jake LaMotta, because he has, you have a lot of empathy towards him because he's kind of this, this version of like some kind of the super under, this really underground character who is such an underdog, and he has so many things stacked up against him, so many personal things, and where his career is at, where he is personally and emotionally. A lot of those things are because of his own choices, but he just has so many odds stacked against him, and so on one route, or on one hand, you kind of really root for Jake LaMotta because it's like the ultimate story of like this underdog, and you kind of, at least from my perspective as such a fan of this film, you kind of root for him to kind of pull through. But then there's also things about his character where he's such a monster and such a volatile person that you kind of like are disgusted by him, and you're kind of repelled by him because he is such a kind of a bastard to women and to the people that he supposedly loves in his life, and it spills over from into his it spills over from his personal life into his professional life, and vice versa. Like you kind of get this sense that even though he even in situations where he wasn't in the ring fighting, he was fighting in and out of the ring constantly with himself and his world and his society, and just at war with himself, trying to find himself, trying to find some kind of solace or peace. So he's got so many complex things going on. And that's the thing that is the greatest aspect of this film, because it's pure lightning on screen, but to have this situation where you're drawn to this character, but you're also realizing how complex he is, and at one minute you're rooting for him and you totally have empathy towards him, and then the other 5 minutes later you're just this guy is a monster and he should be like locked up in prison. And I just think that that is, to me, testimony to how amazing this film is. It's such a just on a emotional level, it's such an incredible roller coaster. And I was super excited when I bought this because I had seen this movie a bunch of times growing up, and it always was such a uh, kind of a transformative movie, and just so intense, and just because it's so raw, it's brutal as all hell. It's just like in your face, and it's just a dirty, low down movie in a lot of ways. And and I remember always being mesmerized by this film. And but for years I hadn't seen this movie until I saw this in the shop at Bull Moose. Oh, I actually think I got this. Actually, I think I got this at Borders in Augusta. Now that I think of it, and I had not seen it. And I remember watching. I never seen it on Blu-ray, and I remember watching it, and I was completely blown away. And I've seen it quite a few times since then. And this is like the greatest version of this film by far. So complete masterpiece. And it comes with a lot of great special features. There's a lot of great interviews. There's some fabulous documentaries. But, and I know this movie is so well known to a degree, but I also feel this movie is kind of forgotten about. I feel like this movie isn't talked about enough. And I feel like Scorsese, even now, even to this day, he still, as a director, hasn't lost that fire that he had early on in his career, especially when he made, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, like back to back, The King of Comedy, just movies that are just like going for the jugular, and it's like no holds barred. I still feel now he still has that fire and that juice. And I can't really honestly think of a movie that he has directed that sucks. Everything he's done has been so great. And he has done, many different kinds of films. So, I think, and I brought that up, like directors that are still, going at such a high level, and when you reflect or look at their body of work, how consistent they are. And a lot of times that isn't the case, but I think he is definitely one of those examples of just, it's high level art all the way through. I think like Akira Kurosawa is another director. You know, close to 100 films to his credit. I mean, everything that I've seen. There's certain films I haven't seen of his yet, but everything that I have seen and that I'm aware of they're all just incredible. Like, throughout the decades. I think also, I think Quentin Tarantino is pretty much there too. Just an incredible body of work. And I think, directors like Denis Villeneuve, and a contemporary director, amazing. He's at that level. Stanley Kubrick, my favorite director of all time, just incredible. And then you have, your directors that just for various reasons, they I feel like maybe it's usually the case of like where it's early on in their career, they were just hitting home runs all the time. But there's a whole bunch of directors that, if you look at their complete kind of collection of films, it's all over the place and it's not very consistent. I think like one of my favorite directors, Brian De Palma, amazing, amazing director. Dress to Kill, um, The Fury, so many great films that he made in the 70s and 80s. But then when you got into the late 90s and even in the 2000s, you don't even recognize his films to be his films anymore. Like everything has gone askew. I don't know. There's all this inconsistency, and the quality is just not up to par, up to speed. When you look at those classics, when there were two or three solid decades, at least 2 decades of where he was one of the greatest filmmakers ever. I think and another director that I feel is that's in that same way is Ridley Scott. Where the early part of his career, I mean, just incredible. But then afterwards, right up until now, you're like, I don't know what the heck's really going on. It's like his films are all over the place, and they're okay, and some of them are terrible, and then they're just And I think there's various reasons behind it. I think it could be because of pressure from certain studios. Maybe they just lose their focus as directors. They have to compromise. There's all kinds of things, and it's hard to like say anything negative about those guys. But as a filmmaker, I mean, as a film fan and a film fanatic, I just feel that there is like this huge consistency as compared inconsistency as compared to the directors like Scorsese, where you can, you could pick anything blindly out of his career, and it's just incredible. So at the end of the day, I highly recommend this film. This is the ultimate way to see this film, Raging Bull in 1980. A tremendous movie, one of the most intense film going or film watching experiences you'll ever have. So this is Jason Dean. Thanks again for your support, and we will see you next time. Peace.